Okay, so this will be part 2 of the crossover pipe install for a 2017 Fiesta ST. We just got the Ramair Crossover Pipe delivered by the post office. It's in perfect shape. I picked that up from Whoosh Motorsports and got it to me really promptly. So get the pipe out. I always run a towel through whatever intake pipe or whatever I have and through the coupler. Take the sticker off just to make sure there's no debris left in there. Usually they're pretty clean, but just to make sure. And again, we have cowl off, and I'm going to go ahead and take the intake out, engine intake out, sorry, AAM. And then all we have to do to get the crossover out once we have our intake off, so obviously pull the filter, pop the MAF, pop the evap line, and the 2 hose clamps. And then there's 1 hose clamp down here. It's gonna be hard to see, but there's a hose clamp down in here that tightens down the crossover pipe to the turbo. So not a lot to do with everything taken out, so we're gonna go ahead and pop the connections off and get the crossover installed. Once you have your intake tube and filter or air box out, whatever system you have, you most likely just leave the air box in if you have the stock system, but you're going to need to take the tube out. I'm going to go ahead, pop off this I think it's a PCV line, and this is a let's see, it's a 10mm bolt right here, and this is a 12mm. So I got 12mm deep socket for the cover mount. And then you got a 10mm here just for the mount. Holds the engine, and get those guys off, and then we just have to release the clamp on the turbo, and we should be able to get this crossover out. So here's a better shot of the clamp on the turbo side. So that's going to be a 7mm socket, or you could use a stubby flathead, but I'd recommend getting a small ratchet, 1/4 inch drive with a 7mm, just so you get positive engagement on that on the head of that clamp. And go ahead and loosen it up. We have our other bolts out, and this thing should come right out. So when you're loosening the hose clamp down on the turbo side, just loosen it till it's nearly popped off or till it pops free, because you feel like you got this thing loose, but it still grabs on pretty good. So just learn that just keep going until it's real wobbly, because this thing still wants to stay in there pretty good. And there's a plastic coupling down here that goes to the turbo, so you don't want to be pulling on that too much, and still have the clamp holding on. That's still in there pretty good, so probably gonna have to work it with 2 hands to get it free. Okay, so with a little bit of fighting, we got this crossover out. There's quite a tight seal, rubber seal, gasket on the bottom of it. So wiggling from the top, you're not getting enough leverage. I had to get way down in here and really give it a hard jerk back and forth and get a little bit of twist with it. Still in the post, it's hard to get any kind of twisting to get it freed up, but stay with it and she'll come free. And that's it. Crossover pipe's out. Again, because of the amount of work, I wouldn't say work, but amount of force and kind of the tight space to get this end of it released, you see the rubber seal there, I'd highly recommend taking the cowl out for anybody doing this. It just makes it just so much easier. I couldn't imagine doing this with a cowl in. I think you'd be risking tearing some wires, definitely cutting yourself up. So, okay, we're gonna go ahead and put the boot on and get the Ramair crossover in. Don't forget to pull your grommets out of the stock crossover pipe while you have it handy. I usually run a screwdriver in the hole just for a little bit of leverage to kind of ease them out, and then we're going to take these stock guys and put them in the Ramair pipe. So a little bit of a challenge I wasn't expecting when putting the grommets back in. See, the slot is definitely not big enough to easily get this through. So I think what the design intent is how I got the other side on, is to kind of slip it through the channel. It's hard to do on the phone, but get this guy through the channel, and then get the ferrule, the metal part in there. You can kind of leverage it through the channel using a screwdriver, and then you kind of twist the grommet over the lip, like screw it in a little bit once you get the metal portion all the way up in there. I'll see if I can get it halfway and then show the finish. You can see here I have it started. Much easier to get it from the backside because the little ferrule in there spacer is same diameter as the opening in the rubber grommet. So once you get it kind of wedged through, your screwdriver should be able to twist it into place. It's tearing up the grommet a little bit. I think if I was to put the stock one back in, I'd probably replace these, but that's how you get these in. They're kind of a pain on this pipe. So, okay, we're gonna finish this up and then move it on to the car. Okay, so the clamps that come with the coupler are 7mm hex 6-point as well. So I'm gonna kind of run the clamp down a little bit, get a little tighter around the smaller coupling, and then we're gonna go ahead and put it down there on the compressor inlet down there. I think it'll be easier to have it on that guy because that pipe was a pretty tight fit. Getting it out, it's plastic, so it's probably going to want to get a little sticky on there. So there's a compressor inlet. We're going to go and put it on. Make sure you have your bolt side of the clamp easy access, because if you ever want to tighten it down with the cowl back on, it's going to be a little more complicated. So once you get this boot on there, you want to make sure you're up against the plastic shelf or shoulder, and make sure that your clamp, is kind of centered, not perfectly centered, but make sure you've got a decent amount of the bottom of the pipe, top of the pipe between it, so it doesn't blow off on any of the sides. It's not really going to blow off because this is the intake side, but anyway, get it seated well, tighten that clamp up, and then we're going to put the crossover on. Once you have your coupler in and tightened down, the turbo side, you're going to go ahead, put your hose clamp on, your second hose clamp on. Kind of fell down here, but it's nice because I want it to be as loose as possible, fitting the crossover pipe into the boot. But make sure you get that guy on. You're going to take it all out again, and then you're going to start wiggling your crossover pipe into the boot. Make sure you're aligning it with a post here, your grommet with a post, and yeah, we should just be wiggling it down, get the clamp up, tighten it down, and we're just going to put everything back together after that. You are going to butt up against this AC line a little bit when you're pushing it in. I'm hoping I think once it gets in, it's going to shift down lower than that. But as you're getting it in there, it's going to tag it a little bit, but it's not like you have to jam it past it. And it's okay, so we're going to get it tightened down and then put the rest of it back together. Okay, we've got it fully seated in here, the end of the crossover pipe into the coupler. Find that little bit of wiggling, but just actually some force downward. Just push it down. It slides fairly easily. It's a little bit of resistance into the coupler. And then once you get seated enough, tighten down your 10mm nut. And then the engine cover mount post, that's 12mm deep socket. Tighten those guys down, just hand tight. And that's it. Check your clamps down there. Check all of your clamps, a little bit after seating them, because the rubber boot will compress a little bit and you can tighten them up a little more. We're going to go ahead and put the intake back on, and we'll be wrapped up. Okay, so we have the intake pipe on. With this AEM system, because it's a rigid pipe, it gets pretty tight. You actually have really no clearance between the computer cover and the pipe. Your seat kind of gets stuck in there. I mean, it's not pushing up against it hard, and it's sitting on an isolator mount down here, so it should be fine. And these guys are on isolator mounts, so it has some give. There's a little bit of play in there, but definitely tight. One thing, when you're fitting these, I made the mistake of tightening down the isolator bolts first before I fitted everything. It's much easier to have those loose so things can kind of snap into place and center themselves. The PCV, I believe it's PCV. Anyway, this connection went on pretty easy. I guess the previous generation of these Ramairs had some issues, but this guy went on pretty well. Everything else fit pretty good. Coupler lined up real good. I don't think I'm gonna have any problems closing it up. It's just a little tight right here. Glad there's a guard on the computer. I was thinking about doing a ethanol content gauge, and I know some of the guys like Dizzy is working on his own, and he's tying it to this plastic cover, so hopefully they're going to put it lower, because I may have to come up with something else if I do that. Anyway, simple stuff to do. Put the cowl back in, reverse the order. I don't know if I'll take too much of a video of that unless I come into any challenges. But this is pretty much wrapping it up. Just put the filter back on. The MAF. May do some quick pointers on putting the headlights back in because they're kind of a pain, but everything else wrapped up. Okay, so when you're putting the lower cowl portion back in, these on the other side, these little metal tabs, there's actually a slot in between, so it slides right onto the sheet metal lip of the car. So you just slide it in, line up your bolt holes up here, the one up here, and then you get the two guys on either side over here. Those are, I believe those were 10 millimeter, and those are ones that you really don't want to crank down too hard because they're screwing right into plastic. That's all you got there. You're at it, you want to make sure you get your leaves out. So yeah, pretty good clearance here. Once we get it tightened down, you can see, I think there's actually more clearance now than there was originally, but pipe's definitely bigger. This AEM coupler that was, you know, kind of had memory from the stock crossover pipe. I had to do some stretching to get it on there, so didn't really measure it. I'll measure the old one. I know this is 70 millimeters, so I can measure the old one. I think it's probably 65, 60 millimeters. So now the AEM, which is 70 mil, matches up. So we have pretty much the same diameter until we get to the turbo compressor inlet, and then it knocks down. But yeah, I mean, it all fits pretty well. A little tight if you got a hard pipe all the way through, but I think this is better than getting a kit that it's all one piece, because you can get a little bit of movement in here, kind of help with the engine movement. But we're gonna go ahead, throw the bolts in, pop the top cowl on, and then put the headlights in. Okay, so when fitting the upper cowl in place, make sure you line up these little tabs where those nasty little clips went, and you got some little flaps right here. Kind of seal up this gap. You got them on either side. One right here, and then you're going to want to get this little trim seal back in place. It comes off the windshield trim. I want to get that guy tabbed back in. There's just a little tab there, and then you have one on the other side. So this guy kind of popped under, so just make sure you catch those before you tighten everything down. Just tab that guy in. You may want to wipe it off a little bit. It's not trapping extra dust in there. Then go ahead and put your clips back in. These little nasty guys. You should just be able to slide them back in and move on to putting the wipers back in. So once you have all the clips on the upper cowl installed, you can move on to putting the wiper blades back on. When you're putting the clips on, make sure that you get these seams right here engaged. There's a little lip that they engage with all the way up kind of to the last tab, or the tab just before the last one on the end. Get those engaged, and then everything should close up real nice. Make sure you put this VAP tube. There's a little bushing right here on it. Make sure you get that engaged in the clip, and then run the clip back up again, lock it in so that guy won't be bouncing around, and then go ahead and put the wiper blades in. When you're putting them in, you need to use both hands, and again, because of the spring force here, you're going to kind of hold it flat a little bit. So you kind of bend in, one hand on the other side, push it in, and then wiggle it back on the post, and use your tape that you installed when you took them off to line the wiper up. Just make sure everything's set right. So the torque spec for these 15 millimeter wiper bolts is 24 Newton meters. Unfortunately, that's about close to 18, about 17.5 foot-pounds, somewhere in there. My 3/8 drive goes to 20 foot-pounds, and so I'm using my inch-pound wrench, and I'm going to hit it with about 16 and a half, 17 inch-pounds, and I'll get us close enough. So torque is 24 Newton meters for anybody interested in actually torquing them. Now for the fun part, putting the headlights back in. See this white tab right here. Yeah, the light's getting too hard to make out, but you got this white tab. This portion of the headlight assembly needs to rest in that tab. The problem is you've got to get these two tabs that poke out under the lip. So you have to rotate it from the inside outward and align it with the white clip. It's kind of hard to get on video. Let me see if I can get it positioned and then kind of show you. So I have it resting in right now, and little tabs are under it. Another thing you got to keep in mind is you've got to get the front tab under this little plastic air dam. And you can see it's very difficult to see in here, especially with the angle the headlight assembly is on right now. The white clip's back in there, but while you're doing it, you got to try to align it, and you're going to want to, it's a good place to grab it, but rotate the assembly outward like that. Try to get that tab aligned, and then you've got to get this clip pushed back in when it's further back. Get this guy back into the hole when it's further back, and then slide it forward. Okay, so you can see it right now with the tab not fully engaged. You can see it right here. It's laying on the bumper lip. And it's definitely a pain to get this guy engaged. And it's still very hard to see. I don't know if I can get it. There's a clip down there. And get that. You can kind of see starting to, the tab from the headlight starting to ride into that clip. It's hard to get this tab down there on the inside engaged and get this guy under. The one in the front right here, that's pretty easy to get in, but this guy's a little more difficult. You may have to pull the bumper out a little bit with your finger while you're rocking the whole assembly inward, because you'll get a divot in here. You don't want to push down. It's designed to slide. I guess it's got a little bevel on it, but you don't want to dig into it. I've already got a little dig there. You can't see it from the outside, but it's still, you don't want to cut in your plastic. Another note is make sure you get this tab, the white tab, as far back as possible when you start. So you can see how that tab from the headlight is supposed to engage the white clip. That's when it's seated properly. And on the outside, you can see the tabs are all under the lip of the bumper. And now we have this back tab. So we slide this guy back a little bit. Takes a little bit of effort, and it'll drop in. Slide it forward, and that's it. You can reconnect your harness. Put your bolts back in, 2 bolts, the T30s, and don't forget your plastic retention clip there for the front air dam. And that's it. It's a little bit of a pain to do the headlights, but don't get frustrated. Don't yank, pull on it too much. Get that white tab all the way back. And again, you want to rock it in, trying to get those clips, those little tabs clips under from the headlight, under the lip as much as possible. The front one's pretty easy. This guy's going to want to land on it a little bit. So kind of get your finger back here on the bumper and pull it out and just let it drop in, then slide it into place. And that's going to wrap it up. Hope this helps some folks out.